can do anything. Just you and me, girl, together. We can do anything. Just you and me.
There you have it. The Very Lazy Sundays, and we're going to talk to them right about now. Let's bring on the gentleman and find out, as they used to say in the old game shows back in the 50s on What's My Line? Or I've Got a Secret, one of them. The introductory line was, would our next guest enter and sign in, please? Who do we have on the phone?
You got DR here, David.
DR, thank you. Welcome aboard. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, my friend. Very good. It's quite late over here, so I'm looking at a dark nighttime scene out my window at the moment. I know what you mean. We have to deal with that when we're talking with artists around the world, and unfortunately, we sometimes have to keep them up a little later than they're normally used to. But you've probably had a couple of gigs that have lasted after dark. No, it's fine, man. All the other the band members will tell you I'm a bit of an insomniac, so this is no problem for me. Well, I don't really sleep very well. This is fine. This is my natural.
Aside from not sleeping very well, we're glad that you're a night hawk in that you are sitting up and spending time with us today. And I know you've got some influences from England. This is an area that John Bon Jovi is really into, your muse, your influences. And I know you've quoted your influences, including the Streets and Ben Harper and a group called the Eels. But I got to tell you, listening to this track that we just did, Suzanne.
Great.
Great song. But I was transported back a few years to a thing called Graceland. You can hear the Paul Simon influence in that.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's something we've had a lot, actually, in that reference point. It's funny how music kind of just permeates your soul a little bit. I never felt that I massively listened to Graceland as an album, but I obviously had growing up. And I guess it just pours out of you when you write stuff. So, yeah, man. I mean, it's an honor to be even mentioned in any kind of reference point to that album. So,
well,
cool.
I'll tell you, there are a lot worse muses you could have. Being compared to Paul Simon is, it is indeed a compliment, and it's there. You can hear it in your song. John Bon Jovi is just gnawing at the bit, wanting to jump in here and say something.
Well, gnawing at the bit, I don't know about that, but sure. DR and I were talking about it in our virtual green room, and that he was a bit of a night hawk, and so I accused him of being a vampire, and then also letting him know that my daughter does the same thing. But it seems to me, DR, and correct me if I'm wrong, that most musicians that are successful are night owls. I've met very few, if any, that will that are going to be able to do decent music when they're asleep at night. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
No, it's an interesting. For me, it's always been when I'm in that kind of sleepy, dreamlike state. That's when I can create stuff. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like when you're too awake or too aware, you can't access the truth inside you. You just think too much. So that's that sounds incredibly. But I think you know what I'm trying to say, right?
I agree with you. Yes, you're basically what you're doing is you're losing your forced consciousness. So the things that you normally have to think about kind of settle into the background, into your subconscious, and you can actually realize the thoughts that are there in the back of your mind. And I know what you mean, even if it is hard to put into words.
Yeah, it's that just kind of, you're just in an honest place kind of thing, and it just comes out. So I think that's probably why the night thing, or just generally just being in that kind of zone where you're not 100% like in both feet in the 9 to 5 world. It does help, right, for sure.
Right. Well, in listening to your music, there are some obvious influences, at least to me, and there are other subtle influences that aren't quite as clear. There's certainly a reggae vibe to it on Suzanne, which was quite nice to hear. But I've, been a reggae fan for years. I've been down in the Caribbean, quite a few times, and, you can never get enough of that kind of thing. So, other than the obvious, what's your influence? Well, my influence is reggae music. Well, what else has gone into making Suzanne, and what else goes into making the music of the Very Lazy Sundays?
Well, it's an interesting one. So Suzanne was the first song I ever wrote, if we're looking for kind of a story behind that particular song. And it was written without an instrument initially. So my personal background was poetry. So I kind of wrote a lot of little verses and ideas of descriptive stuff. And it was my first kind of go at trying to write a basic tune. I was collaborating with another member of the band, early stages in our kind of writing career. And it just kind of came out, man. It came out with that reggae vibe. I think because I don't know, it's a simple tune, right? So, it had a kind of simple lilt to it. It's a summery feel. It was written when I was madly in love. It just has that feel, man. It was written in the summer. So it's an honest reflection of where I was at. Not all our songs are reggae.
See, so now you're mentioning some of the things that are not as obvious. It's written in the summer. It's written when you're in love. And these are the kinds of things that when I ask questions, I want to get out of an artist, and you performed admirably. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I guess that how long has the band been together?
The band in this guise as it is right now, let me think, maybe 9 months. 9 months we've been going, but there's a backstory there. Like with every band, there's been various iterations and many songs written that have been interpreted in different ways. But the Very Lazy Sundays, as you know them and are listening to them right now, about 9 months.
Well, you've come full term, and it's now time to give birth to a tour, don't you think?
Oh, man, if you guys want to have us over, happy. We're in London. We live just outside London, so for us, that's the main musical hub. Do you have a good local following? Yeah, fairly good, man. I mean, it's the unsigned music scene, so it's mostly kind of you're playing I don't know what it is in your side, but like lots of kind of specialist pubs and bars and stuff put on kind of unsigned music nights. So not 100% music news, but somewhere in between. So you normally get a good attendance there. We got some lovely fans that come and see us regularly. So we're doing cool, man.
You guys have a very unique description that I saw of your music. I think, if I remember correctly, it was purveyors of breezy tunes, slamming poetry, and good times. And that kind of seems to sum it up.
That was the aim, man. That's what we're aspiring to, I guess, because there's some poems in there as well. We actually, interestingly, our lead guitar player, George, he also runs a brewery. So we brew some very lazy brews.
He's my new friend.
I'll give you the information for your next trip over there. You can check it out for us.
Sure.
You led me into my next question, though, DR, and that is, tell us a little bit about the guys in the band, because oftentimes when one person from the band is interviewed on a show, sometimes the other guys tend to get overlooked, and we don't like that to happen. We like to get everybody in the spotlight here. So tell us about the guys in the band.
Yeah, man, 100%, man. It wouldn't be the band without that sound and sort of the four of us together. So, in terms of names behind instruments, you've got Pete, who is on the cajon. but is also an amazing guitar player and songwriter in his own right. You've got Dunk, who I would put in exactly the same bracket as Pete, is an amazing multi-instrumentalist. For us, he's mostly playing bass. The two of them add a heck of a lot of harmonies to everything. And then we've got George on lead guitar, who's just adds beautiful licks, interpretations. He's the kind of the thinker of the band. He likes to analyze and place his sounds exactly where he wants them. But generally it's a very organic thing. In terms of the process of how we all work together, so far it's been kind of taking a seed of a song, like melody, words, and throwing it into the mixer. And the pattern I tend to see is when it comes from me, it starts off as quite folk sounding, quite mid-tempo. And once it goes through the band, it comes out with a lot more punch and a lot more pop sounding, which seems to be our thing. But awesome guys.
Interesting.
With them.
Interesting amalgam of the formulation and how one of you can create the song and then everybody jumps in and tunes it. And it must be working because understand that you guys were finalists in a songwriting competition.
This is actually a previous iteration of the band that was early writing days. But yeah, we did get to the finals of a UK songwriting competition, but not as the Very Lazy Sundays. That was more something that I was doing at the early on in my writing, music writing side of things. But in terms of the energy and sound, I mean, what I'd add to that comment would be like I do quite a lot. I don't know if you have it in the US, but like we have open mics quite a lot around here.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Cool. So everyone gets a chance to go up and play songs and such. So because we're quite dispersed, I live like maybe 50, 60 miles from the other guys.
Oh, okay.
That we don't get together that often to rehearse and write. So for me to get my music fix, I often frequent open mics locally to me.
Sure.
And play some of the tunes there just to kind of bash them into shape, see what works, what doesn't. But what is incredibly noticeable is without that band behind the song, the interpretation is so different, man. Like the feel of the song is so different. So you have to kind of get used to that. Playing with a guitar, you're like, okay, this is a very different thing to what we do as a band. And it's almost readjusting the way you see the song. I find that interesting anyway. I kind of got used to it now.
Definitely, and I can understand completely what you're saying there. It's like any group project. One person does it; it's totally different than when the whole group is in on the project. Now you had a single out already, believe "Take Me Home." Yeah, that's right. It's quite a good story behind that one. It's a song that was originally written on a stag do, where I was kind of wanting to go home. Yes, I was. Okay. Do you know what a stag do is? Like, do you have that? No.
Your side?
No, I don't know if I do.
You know The Hangover, the film The Hangover?
Yeah.
That, like, go away, for your the guy's getting married and you go away and you'll get party for like a weekend sort of thing. So we did that, and I'd written the song originally kind of in a hungover kind of days of being away with 10 men and drinking too much. And our lead guitarist took the tune, and he was on holiday, and he met an army major in his holiday complex and just played in this tune for some reason. The guy loved it and said, "Oh man, we should use this for Help for Heroes," which is a big cause for the army in the UK.
Right, yeah.
So ended up this whole thing, momentum behind the song. We got someone to shoot a video for it, and it was used as a charity single. So kind of awesome, man. It kind of came out of nowhere, but it's amazing how these things occur.
Well, we're going to be looking forward to you coming out with more music and hoping that you keep in touch with us. We have a thing here on the show. Once you're on our show, you're a member of our family. You're always welcome. We've always got a place for you. We'll help you promote your music and whatever. So do keep in touch with us. Do you get some new